On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so it's a very important team to have all on the same page. Sounds like you guys are doing a great job. Kind of leads me to what my next thing is for you. Just what do you believe makes a strength and conditioning coach successful?
Yeah.
And then there's going to be a part 2 to that, but I think let's answer that one first.
Sure. So my first mentor, in the NFL for a long time, and he actually kind of had an answer for that question that he told me a long time ago. And so there's 4 things that as a strength coach you can do practically to provide to the athlete. And outside of that, man, then it becomes a little bit harder to control what you're doing. But 4 things that you can control every single day and you can bring to the table. That's structure, that's accountability, that's encouragement or expectation on the inverse side of encouragement, and then love. So like every day I can show up and have at least a plan for what the structure of the day is going to look like, and also provide structure within the context of a workout. I can have a sheet ready for you. I can have my app ready for you, whatever the method of delivery is going to be, but have that ready. And that's not something that's out of my control. Every day I can provide that very reasonably. And especially if you win your relationships with athletes, it doesn't take that much to provide accountability. To tell a guy that he's slacking a little bit, or even he's not matching the effort that he's matched before, or even just ask like, hey, what's up, man? Like, you seem a little bit off. If you win your relationships, that's something that you can do fairly easily. And even if you don't win your relationships, if you do a good job recording where guys have been, then your workout card or your app also provides you a way of accountability, because you can hold a guy accountable to their previous effort. Encouragement also doesn't take that much. You can show up every day, bring energy. If you got to drink 4 coffees or dry scoop pre-workout, then do what you need to do. But you can show up and you can bring energy and you can get excited for the guys when they're giving their best effort. Like, it's something that you can 100% control, no questions asked. And then last but not least, like loving on the guys doesn't take that much. It doesn't take that much to learn everybody's names, to learn a fact about every single person, or create a handshake, or do something that's just like a personal touch point with the athlete, so they know that you actually care and you're actually invested in them, and not just in making them look good in the weight room so that you look good for your own career, but actually being like invested long term in that athlete and really wanted to see them succeed. So those are the 4 things that I think kind of define success in this. Those are the 4 things that I'm going to hold myself accountable to. And I'm like preaching to the choir too, because it's happened to me a lot already in my career where I get away from those just a little bit, and then everything starts to speed up, because there's a lot of variables out there that are outside of my control, and very easily then everything will start to spiral. So at the end of the day, when I get home, when I come back to the apartment, those are the 4 things I want to like be willing to say, like, I did those things right, because those are the things that I can control.
Yeah, I think those probably are relatable to anybody, not just strength and conditioning, but definitely especially strength and conditioning. And then I like that you said when you get home, like that's kind of how you evaluate your day, right? That's something that I always was like, discipline, work ethic, and consistency were kind of my 3 big pillars that I would follow. And at the end of the day, if I could go home and look in the mirror and, lay in bed and really evaluate my day, if I was those 3 things, I usually felt pretty good. The thing is, as I got to the big leagues, I started to worry more about wins and losses of the team, which were completely out of my control for, I would say, 99.99%, right? And that was when things would start to drift, the same way you said, right? Like when you get away from your big pillars, things start to speed up, they get out of line. Like my whole day was being dictated on whether we won or lost. And I was like living and dying by, today. And, some of that is like when you're in Boston, like there's a really big media presence, like there is a lot of pressure involved for everybody. Obviously you want the players to do well, and when they don't, they get really bashed, in the media and everything like that. So you feel for them when they don't do so well, and you're really hoping that they do well. But again, I think that's so out of our control for the most part that, having something that you can anchor to regardless of like the results of the game that day. And again, there's always a game tomorrow for the most part in baseball until there's not. I think that probably keeps you a little bit more grounded in who you are and your ability to just kind of deliver a good product every day. So I really love those. The part two to this question is more specific towards you. As I mentioned early on in this interview, I have friends that I value their opinions a lot, and they have spoken very highly of you. What have you done to find success for yourself as a young coach from these people that have been around and kind of been there and done that and seen it? And then maybe with a little bit of context to this, like if there's a young coach listening who wants to get into professional baseball and like do really well, like what example do you want to set for them?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing is just relationships. This is a relationship business, and that goes well beyond just baseball. Strength and conditioning in general, it's a relationship business. Your relationship with the athletes, but your relationship with other staff too. So like win those things would be my biggest piece of advice and my biggest key towards success. Kind of like you said, I mean, I don't feel like I'm all that smart. I don't feel like I was all that smart. I don't feel like I am all that smart. But if you win relationships, then like that's going to go a long way for you. I think that's, every step of the way for me, like that can be the highlight to successes. And I've been very fortunate to have good people around me, both with Boston and now here, where it's easy to build those relationships. And then I'm able to learn a lot and maximize the opportunity. And then the relationships with the athletes as well, how big that is. If you have a great relationship with the athlete, your job becomes so much easier. I think it is the most precious commodity that you have in this industry in terms of like getting guys to do what they need to do and having the credit to tell a guy that he's out of line when he's out of line. That comes from the basis of having a good relationship. And if you don't have that, it's all going to go by the wayside. And the other thing that I would say too, that I've been very fortunate in as well, is having relationships away from the field that are like building me up and helping me to be energized and ready to do what I need to do, and not relationships outside the field that are going to drag me down. I'm going to take whatever baggage into work with me. Very thankful for my family who's been very supportive, and my lovely girlfriend who's been supportive, and friends that I've had for a long time have been very supportive. That's something that lifts me up and not something that tears me down. So relationships on the field and off the field. And I think like to succeed in this industry, relationships are of critical importance.
Yeah, that's really good, man. And I think the piece about having relationships away from work is incredibly valuable to make you really good at work, because the reality of professional baseball specifically is you are gone so much. The higher up you go, I've said this story before, like there was a point in 21 where we went on a 10-day West Coast trip, and I didn't even get to talk to my wife for 10 days. Because the time difference, and by the time I woke up she was at work, and then by the time she's done with work I'm in the middle of my work day, and then when the game is over she's already asleep. And I say all of that, and it's really just an excuse on my part to not prioritize that relationship. I was putting so much time into the relationships at work that my relationships outside of work were really struggling. And so when I went home, I wasn't really maximizing those, because I just was putting all the eggs in the work basket and not really having that balance. And so I think like kind of reflecting myself is just, if I would have put more time into those things away from the field, it probably would have made me even better at the field, because I would have been a little bit more balanced and a little bit more relaxed, instead of just, like I said, I was basically like, if we lost today, I would go home, like, don't talk to me. And for my wife to like stick around, and my family and my friends to kind of understand that, like, he's away, this is kind of his thing, like he's been wanting to do this, like, and then support me through all of that, even when I was, to be honest, I was just a shitty person to them. Like, it's really good to know you have that. And then when things do change and you kind of come to that realization, it's like, oh, okay, these people have supported me all along, like I need to give back to them as well. And to be quite honest, like it's hard sometimes. We talked about earlier with the young kids, especially, like you're banging your head on the wall all day. Like sometimes the last thing you want to do is go home and be further connected with people. At least for me, right? Like I'm kind of introverted by nature. So when I went home, it was like now's my time to shut down, leave me alone. I don't want to be bothered. And my wife kind of understood that and like supported me through it, but also like there was definitely strain there. And I think that's, I mean, being realistic, like there's a lot of divorce, there's a lot of family issues in baseball. The schedule is just so grueling. And if you don't take time, like you said earlier, to take care of yourself, and you're saying now to take care of those relationships away from the field, like at some point it is going to eat you up. At some point, you're probably going to burn out. So you talk like a seasoned veteran, man. And I think that's a big reason that the people that I put trust in put their trust in you and think very highly of you, is because you already kind of have the foresight to take care of these things, even at a young age in your career. And again, and my advice is just like, make sure you stay to that as you get older and you move up in the game and everything. Like, keep the main thing in your life. Baseball is really cool. The job's really cool, but there are people that are going to support you long after you leave the game. And you need to make sure that you show them love and support as well, and not just your athletes. So, but yes, all very good, all very relevant. Kudos to you. I am really excited to just kind of watch you grow. This is kind of the same thing, right? Like your young kids in the rookie league, like just watching them develop and see where they go. That's kind of how I feel the same thing for you, based on everything that people have said and just this conversation. But kind of moving to the next one here, we've kind of been hitting on it, but is there anything else advice wise that you have for others? And this could also include older coaches that just want to maybe learn from a younger coach that's kind of new into the game, or, you know, kind of further elaborating on those young coaches that kind of want to get in as well. Just any advice that you have.
Yeah. You know, win your relationships. I know I've said that already, but I think that's the biggest thing that I can have. And then like the second thing is take the opportunities that come, like be willing to go with life in order to do it. And I think that's the requirement if you want to break into baseball. You know, for me, I was being willing to leave a full-time job to take a seasonal opportunity with Boston, and then being willing to move out to Arizona from Florida in order to have my first full-time spot. So being willing to be adaptable and change is something that you're going to need to break in. But I think like the character piece, winning relationships, and, you know, being the person that you need to be, I think that's the thing that will carry you the furthest.
Is there anything specifically in terms of winning relationships that you think you do really well, or that you would advise other people do, that can kind of help them be better at relationship building or effective communication or anything like that?
No. I read a book recently that was pretty good about this. How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's a good one. There's good tips in there about just what to consider when you consider like interactions as like wins or losses. And, you know, it's not supposed to be transactional when you have relationships. If you're going about that, you've already lost. But, you know, to have an idea of like, you know, this is an interaction that I had with a person that's probably helping my relationship, or this is an interaction I had that's probably hurting, and I probably need to like go back to that. And kind of building off that too, same thing. And you've given me some kudos here for having some wisdom. It's because I've been around some great people in this industry who have built into me a lot, and I'm very thankful to them. And go back to this guy again, Jeff Friday told me like always close the loop. So in relationships, like you're gonna have tense moments and you're gonna have times where you mess up. So always like closing back and circling back in that loop, and closing it off, and not like leaving anything hanging in the context of that relationship. I think that's really big too. And then I think authenticity and just like being who you are, like living it out, and make a point to then have that relationship. If you're being authentic and you make a point to actually like talk to people, and you make a point to actually care about what they're telling you and actually listen, I think that's going to go a long way. And then it's just making a point to do it. It doesn't become as challenging.
Yeah, I think the best friendships I've really developed over the years in the game were, some of them have come from this podcast, and a lot of it is like, yeah, we do the interview, and then when the camera's off, like we just talk. And then, you know, from there, like I was living in Arizona in the minor leagues, and it was like, hey, if anybody wants to come hang out, like I'm just going to set up a table at this restaurant at 6 o'clock, like come hang. Yeah. And before you know it, you have a bunch of different people from a bunch of different organizations, like meeting each other. And it's just very natural, very authentic. And for me, those are really the best friendships, right? You kind of hit it on the head there. It's not really meant to be transactional. And if you're just going into a conversation just to try to, you know, gain an advantage for your career. People talk about like networking all the time. Like if you're going to a conference strictly to find somebody to better your career, that doesn't usually stick. But a lot of the places I've been in this in this world of strength and conditioning are just because of the friendships I've made. And a lot of those friendships are just through genuine conversation and like curiosity on one person's part of like, hey, have you ever like lifted with chains before? Like, oh yeah, actually we've done this. Like, and it's just being very open. And I think sometimes this industry is like, oh, you got to be hush hush, like don't give the secrets away. And it's like, again, there's a lot of things outside of baseball that is life and like will far past like any time you spend in the game. And those friendships to me are more important than like, dude, I can't really tell you what we're doing with our force plates. I'm not going to tell you specifically what this one individual does, but as a whole, like, I think we can kind of share those for the betterment of our own lives and our own friendships. And then the other thing that you hit on that I want to make sure we address here is you talk about like taking the opportunities that come, and you left a full-time gig to take a part-time, no guarantee type of deal, like move down to Florida, then you move to Arizona. Like when you're an early coach in your career, like you almost have to be willing to do those things to, like you said, break in, get your foot in the door. Mm-hmm. And then once you do all those other things, you love on people, you're authentic, you're a good person, you're a good worker. That's when those avenues kind of open to like being in a specific role that you want. But usually you don't just come out of college and like just get the role you want. And sometimes it takes a decade to get to where you want. But I think if you have that long-term vision and you're willing to kind of adapt early on, and then you kind of earn the right to like, okay, hey, I really don't want to travel, or hey, I'd really rather be here, or hey, can I be, in the off season, can I spend time here instead? You kind of earn those as you go. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think that gets a little bit lost on the young generation. It's just like, hey, I got my degree. I also got my master's degree. I got my CSCS. I'm ready to take on the world. And it's like, hold on, there's like thousands of other people that also have a master's degree and a CSCS, and they have 10 years in the pros. Like your time will come. So all really good advice. I do kind of want to run with, you're talking about reading a book. What other continuing education resources do you have? Either other books that you would recommend, podcasts you listen to, seminars you attend, like where are you going to stay on top of things?
Yeah. I'm trying to develop the habit of becoming a reader, because that's not something that I had in my even younger days, but I'm trying to develop that habit now. So what I really like doing is going to the off season, or when I was in the private, it was the slower season, but now it's the off season, and pick a book and read through that entire book, usually like on the topic of programming, and try it for myself. So last year was triphasic training. I got a monster and super training queued up, so I'll read that this off season. And then I also like to just, in season read something a little bit like quicker and easier to digest. So that was this year was, How to Win Friends and Influence People. In the past, it's been The Four Agreements is a good one. That's an old one, but a classic. And then, I like to read my Bible every day too. That's something that just, walk in with like a sense of peace, ready to think a little less about me and a little bit more about my athletes when you walk into the day. And then this year, the big one has been a webinar, not a seminar, but a webinar, Cressy Sturdy Shoulders. So that's something that I'm going to be going back to year after year, because there was just a lot of wisdom in that guy. And felt like there's a lot of things that I've seen in 2 seasons in this industry that just makes a lot more sense after going through and sitting through that. So that will probably end up being something that's like a continual keep going back to in Cressy Sturdy Shoulders. And then we'll just add from there. I haven't been a podcast guy at this point, but trying to work on the skill of being a reader.
What are you doing specifically with you're talking about like a habit of reading? Like, are you blocking off time for yourself every day that you're like forcing, like, hey, I have to read? Or are you like setting a certain amount of pages per week, or like how are you developing that habit for yourself?
Time. And it started this season. I was doing camp day and off day. I can commit 30 minutes, but more recently it's been, I can commit 10 minutes every single day to, just reading something, whether it's something easy or even, I get the journals sent to me too, in the NSCA journals, like find an article, sit down with 10 minutes and read the article. Even if something like that, just commit 10 minutes to doing it.
Yeah, I was a a few off seasons ago, I was trying to read like one article a week and then like highlight it and actually like make notes. I think when I was younger, I was making the mistake of like, if I read 50 books this year, that's accomplished. But then by the time I get to book 30, I don't even remember what the first 5 books were because I was just trying to read so fast. As I've gotten older, my habits have changed and kind of the same, like just dedicate a few minutes a day, really digest it. And then, like you said, in the off season, have something that like, this is kind of my project for the off season. So I was starting to get away from books and starting to get more into courses, and kind of just leaning on my mentors and my circle of friends to like, hey, what are you studying that is something that would help me? And be like, oh, I'm studying like training with a Viper log, and I was like, I don't know what that is, but I'll dig into it. And then like, oh, I'm doing water bags, like you should go here. Like, oh, I'm doing FRC, you should go there. And that was kind of how I digested it as well. It was just like my off season, I would keep the big projects, and then like you said, in season it's hard to find time, but you can certainly find 10 to 15 minutes a day. And I think that's the biggest things. People are like, oh, I just don't have time. And then when you're like, you spend 30 minutes a day scrolling Twitter and Instagram, like you have time, you just have to prioritize it. And then it becomes a habit. And then all of a sudden your screen time goes down, your reading time goes up. And then before you know it, your 10 minutes becomes 20 and then 30. And then you're actually like reading books and digesting them. So hopefully the journey goes well for you to become a more avid reader. And if not, there's always webinars and seminars and podcasts and phone calls that you can learn from people too. So are you a physical books guy, or are you like a Kindle person?
Physical. I want to have the book, and I want to have like my multicolored pen with like annotated underline, like this color means this,
Same. Yeah. Honestly, like some of my friends ask me for my books just because I put so many notes in them, and they're like, I'd rather read your notes than like the actual book. So
yeah.
Totally relatable. But Max, it's been good to get to know you. It's been good to talk some shop with you. I have a lightning round for you, and then I will get you out of here. Cool with that?
Sounds great.
Cool. 4 questions, long or short of answers as you'd like. First one, who is your biggest influence in the field of strength and conditioning?
My first mentor, Jeff Friday, 21 years in the NFL and still learning stuff from him.
One piece of equipment to train with, what would it be?
I want to say like a straightaway for sprints, but I can't do. I'm going to go with a landmine. Give me a landmine. It's versatile.
Biggest accomplishment professionally and or personally?
Just the relationships I have with my awesome family, my awesome girlfriend, and awesome friends, being able to still hold on to some relationships there.
Any career other than strength and conditioning, what would you choose?
I think a zoologist, like the dude, you go to the zoo, like I said, that there's that dude standing in the walk-through kangaroo thing. Like that'd be electric.
Really? Okay. All right. Bonus question, Florida or Arizona?
It's like 6 one way, half a dozen the other. I don't know. Arizona's closer. Florida's humid. Man, I'll go Arizona. I'm in Arizona. Why not Arizona?
Okay, good. I knew I liked you from the start. Contact info. If the listeners want to get in touch with you, where can we get more? Is social media the best place, or where should we go?
Yeah, social media. You can find me on LinkedIn at Max Miller CSCS or on Instagram, MaxMiller_6.
Perfect. Max, I appreciate your time. I appreciate getting to know you, and I look forward to further conversations with you. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of the season, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you.
All right, everybody, that's going to conclude part 2 of this 2-part episode with Max. I hope you enjoyed both part 1 and part 2. Again, if you missed part 1, we talked much more, his journey into pro ball, programs, buy-in, working in the Arizona Complex League, where obviously in part 2 here, we talked much more on the soft skills of coaching, relationship building, and how to find success both at work and at home. 3 things that I took from Max in this part of the interview. 4 things that will help you to find success are structure, accountability, encouragement, and love. Quality relationships both on the field and off the field will help you to be a better coach and a better person. And authenticity and open-mindedness will help you to grow and make progress in your career. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.